The sound of Cheryl's BMW slamming to a stop in my driveway was music to my ears. She stumbled out of her car like a woman possessed, her perfectly styled hair whipping in the morning breeze as she stared at my masterpiece in absolute horror. 8 feet of beautiful cedar fencing, stretching from my back porch straight down to the lake's edge, cutting right through the middle of what she'd illegally granted to her cousin last month. The fence stood like a monument to property law, complete, with no trespassing signs every 10 feet. "You can't do this," she shrieked, her voice cracking with the kind of desperation that comes from watching your corruption scheme crumble in real time. "That's community property. I'll have you arrested." I stepped out onto my porch, coffee mug in hand, and smiled at the woman who'd spent 6 months trying to steal my lakefront. "Actually, Cheryl, I can do this. And I have about 40 pages of legal documentation that says so." Behind the fence, I could see her cousin Derek frantically packing up his boat dock, the one he'd illegally installed on my property after Cheryl granted him lake access through forged HOA documents. The same dock that was now completely inaccessible, thanks to my perfectly legal spite fence. But let me back up and tell you how we got to this beautiful morning. Buying the lakefront house in Willowbrow Commons felt like winning the lottery. After years of saving, I'd finally found my dream home, a modest cottage with 200 feet of pristine lake frontage and a view that belonged on a postcard. The realtor had been very clear. The lake access is what you're really paying for. It's rare to find this much private waterfront. I should have known trouble was brewing when Cheryl Patterson introduced herself at the closing. She materialized in the lawyer's office like a pastel-colored storm cloud, clipboard clutched against her chest like a shield of suburban authority. Everything about her screamed power-hungry with a persecution complex, from her aggressively highlighted bob to her sensible heels that clicked against the floor like a metronome of doom. "Congratulations on your new home," she chirped. But her eyes were already assessing, calculating. "I'm Cheryl Patterson, your HOA president. We'll need to discuss some community guidelines about lake usage." The binder she handed me was thicker than my mortgage documents. 53 pages of regulations about everything from dock specifications to fishing restrictions. "Quite comprehensive," I said, choosing my words like a lawyer, which I was. Her smile sharpened into something predatory. "We take our lakefront very seriously here. I'm sure you'll cooperate with our community standards." That should have been my first red flag. The community standards revealed themselves quickly. Within a week, I had violation notices for my non-compliant dock identical to every other dock on the lake, my excessive boat usage I'd gone out twice, and my unauthorized fishing activities. Apparently I needed a permit to fish from my own property. Each violation came with a $75 fine and Cheryl's signature, flourished like she was signing the Constitution. But I'm not just any homeowner. I'm a real estate attorney who specializes in property disputes and HOA law. I know the difference between legitimate regulations and power-hungry bullying. Time to do what I do best: research. The HOA documents made for fascinating reading. Buried in the original covenants, I found something interesting. Individual lot owners had exclusive use and enjoyment of their designated lakefront footage. The HOA could regulate activities, but they couldn't grant lake access to non-residents. Yet somehow, Cheryl's cousin Derek had been using community lake access for over a year, complete with a permanent dock and boat slip. I dug deeper. Property records, meeting minutes, financial statements. The picture that emerged was ugly. Cheryl had been systematically rewriting HOA rules to benefit her family while squeezing out residents she deemed problematic. She turned a homeowners association into her personal kingdom, but knowing something and proving it are different things. I needed her to overplay her hand. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. I stopped paying the bogus fines and started using my lakefront exactly as intended: swimming, fishing, enjoying the property I'd legally purchased. Cheryl's response was swift and predictable. She called an emergency HOA meeting to address my flagrant violations and propose a solution to the lake access crisis. The meeting was held in the community center, with Cheryl holding court like a suburban dictator. Her loyal board members flanked her like disciples, nodding along to her every proclamation. As we all know, she announced dramatically, lake access is a privilege, not a right. That's why the board is implementing new guidelines for lakefront usage. She pulled out a professionally printed document, the kind that looks official but isn't. Effective immediately, all lake access will be managed through community easements. This ensures fair usage for everyone. The room murmured nervously. Most residents were too intimidated to object. What kind of easements? Asked Mr. Rodriguez from Lot 12. Cheryl's smile could have frozen hell. The board will designate specific areas for community use. Private lot owners will maintain their property, but lake access will be redistributed for maximum benefit. I leaned back in my plastic chair, studying her like a specimen under a microscope. She was about to illegally seize lakefront property through fraudulent documents. The woman was either supremely confident or completely delusional. Turned out, it was both. The easement document arrived in my mailbox 3 days later. It was a masterpiece of legal fraud, official-looking letterhead, fake notary seals, and language that granted Derek Patterson perpetual lake access across my property. According to Cheryl's forgery, I was required to provide a 50-foot easement along my entire lakefront for community use. The same 50 feet where Derek had conveniently installed his dock. Any legitimate lawyer would have laughed her out of court. Unfortunately for Cheryl, I was a very legitimate lawyer with a very long memory. Time to play chess while she was playing checkers. The first step was documentation. I had Derek's illegal dock surveyed, photographed, and cataloged. Every board, every nail, every inch of my property he'd occupied without permission. The second step was research. I pulled property records going back 50 years, confirming that my lakefront had always been privately owned. No easements, no community rights, no legal basis for Cheryl's power grab. The third step was the most satisfying. I filed for a fence permit. The county planning office was happy to approve my application. After all, I was just building a fence on my own property, along my own property lines. The fact that it would cut directly through Derek's illegal dock was just a delicious coincidence. Construction began at dawn on a Saturday. By noon, I had 8 feet of beautiful cedar fencing stretching from my house to the water's edge, creating a perfect property line barrier. Derek's dock was now split in half, with his boat slip on one side and his parking area on the other. To access his boat, he'd have to either trespass on my property or swim around the fence. The sound of Cheryl's car in my driveway told me she'd discovered my masterpiece. This is illegal, she screamed, waving her fake easement document like a battle flag. You can't fence off community property. I pulled out my property survey and the county fence permit. Cheryl, this is my property. I have every right to fence it. But the easement? The board approved community access. The board approved fraud. I handed her a copy of my legal brief. Your easement is forged. Your cousin's dock is illegal. And your attempt to steal my lakefront is going to cost you everything. Her face went white as she read the first page. You can't prove. I can. Prove all of it. Forged documents, illegal construction, abuse of office. I've been documenting your corruption for months. She sank onto my porch steps, the weight of her situation finally hitting her. But Derek already invested so much in the dock. Derek invested in stolen property. That's his problem. The lawsuit was filed Monday morning. By Wednesday, Cheryl had resigned from the HOA board. By Friday, Derek was dismantling his illegal dock. The new HOA president is much more reasonable. Turns out, when you remove the corrupt dictator, democracy has a funny way of working itself out. As I write this, I'm sitting on my dock, my legally owned, properly permitted, beautifully fenced dock, watching the sunset over the lake. Sometimes I see Cheryl driving slowly past my house, staring at the fence that destroyed her little empire. Some people collect stamps. I collect property rights. And Cheryl Patterson just learned that you can't steal what's already protected. By law, the fence stands as a monument to a simple truth. Karma doesn't need a courtroom when you have a surveyor and a property deed.